All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. I'm your host, Patrick Moran. Thank you very much for locking in, whether you're listening to us on the audio side, Apple, Spotify, whether you're checking us out on YouTube on the video side. Appreciate y'all very much. This is a special episode here of Talking Buffalo, special because not only do I have my man Tyler Dunne with me, but he is actually here in studio with me here. You're the first real guest, no disrespect to my guy Tone Pucks, but the first legit guest I've ever actually had here in my studio for the video portion of this. Anyway, what's going on, man? How you doing?
Well, I'm just in awe of your studio here, Pat, because it puts mine to shame. You know, we've got one at Go Long HQ. I don't have the what do you call these sound pads? It kind of keeps the sound nice and clear. Pads. You know, Ella might just kind of wander into some of our podcasts and hang out. Sonny too. So I don't think you have a 4 and a 2-year-old.
I do not. I have a 25 and a 21.
But he might wander in.
He might. You saw him cooking already. Met my kid here before the show. We're going to get into what people expect us to get into tonight for sure. Before that, though, I want to let people know that today's episode is sponsored by Imperial Pizza. And speaking of, you and I just banged out some wings from Imperial before we started recording. I said it sarcastically, but I kind of wasn't joking. I was like, we probably could have had a hell of a podcast if we would have just hit record. We were sitting there at the dining room table eating wings from Imperial. Delicious as always, man. Such a consistently good pizzeria chicken wing. One of the best. When it comes to pizzeria wings, Imperial is right there with the best. And I just love the consistency. And there's just so many good things that you could get at Imperial. Enjoyable, right?
Well, I'm not a wing expert like you, but I also don't need to shill. I could keep it real. You know, if they were bad, I'd let you know.
You would,
even as a sponsor. But they're great. They were great. Was that Chevetta flavored?
We had yes. So
that was strong.
It was medium Chevetta, like kind of charred a little bit too. We had some Jamaican jerk, which were spicy, man. Those were pretty spicy. And then we had like Cajun, I think they were Cajun medium.
And now 2 days ago, I had 9/11 Tavern wings, which, you know, that's GOAT status for me. That's absolutely perennial #1 power ranking till the end of time. Cause I just like, basic hot. I don't need to get crazy flavors, bar bill.
Or you're not going to get them at 9/11.
No, I mean, that's, bar bill's bar bill, but I think it's a little overplayed. I'm a 9/11 Tavern guy.
Agreed.
Because of the hot, but to have that less than 48 hours ago, the palate's still kind of fresh. The bar's set pretty damn high. And then, Imperial brought it, man. Those Chevettas hit the spot.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, Imperial, whether it's pizza, fingers, subs, pasta dinner, man, you could go there all the time. You're going to get consistently good food. It's fun to watch too, by the way. So I've been involved with Imperial for a couple of years now, and it's always been a South Buffalo staple. And you know how it is when you grow up in certain neighborhoods, like you got that one or two places that everybody goes to. It's kind of grown though, now I see a lot more people, and it's not just a South Buffalo place anymore. People will come in from all parts of town to go there. So yeah, a great spot. And man, you just said 9/11 Tavern, and you got me wanting 9/11 Tavern wings instantly, man. Oh,
there's some misconceptions out there too. I think some people hear 9/11 Tavern and think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to wait 3.5 hours. No, like what you do, you got to pick the right time.
Yeah, you got a little bit of luck.
I was there on a Saturday night with my brother. We didn't wait long at all, but you get the fin fries to tide you over. You get a big bowl of those fin fries, pound a few Molsons, and you're good.
I think you got a little bit lucky though. If you're going there and not having to have a ridiculously long wait.
I've had one long wait there, and I've been there several times.
Well, I tell you again, I think you might have got a little
I'd wait 8 hours for those wings. Don't get me wrong.
And you're not new to that place. So you know that you better bring cash.
Right.
Because if you have a credit card, you're screwed. I was telling you a story over when we were just eating Imperial here. Went to 9/11 a handful of weeks ago, and I met up with Jerry Ostrowski, his kids. Holy shit, man. He's got a couple big boys, by the way. One of them, I think one of them plays for Tulsa, actually in college. Just a big ass kid, man. Good kid. But anyway, couple people from Buffalo Rumblies, my buddy Joe Miller, and then a couple other people too. And they showed up, and they were new to the place, and they had no idea that you could not have debit cards. And then they went across the street to 7-Eleven to try to get cash. and the machine was down. So
but you know
they
what?
were bumming money from other people to pay for the ship.
I kind of like that though. I mean, we could talk an hour about this, but we need a society where money is like substantive and tangible and kind of matters.
Sure.
I feel like the world is moving toward like this new world order where money doesn't really exist.
Yeah.
Right. You're just kind of like flashing the screen of a phone, or it's like this nebulous thing. I like it, like cash. No, like here's money.
You're a cash guy then.
I'm not, but I aspire to be. See Adam Carolla in me. He makes that point a lot. Yeah. It's but everybody should go there. It's great.
I appreciate you coming on the show. Like I said, it's fun to just have you on as a guest, even if you were at your home studio or wherever. But to be able to sit down with you in person is really cool. And I think I don't know. I just feel like vibes and conversations are different when you get a chance to talk to somebody in person. And I just feel like, given everything that's went on with you, your work, reactions from Bills fans, which we're about to dive into here, I just felt it would be better to be able to sit here and talk to you. I'll preface a couple things before we get going. I've known you for a long time now, going all the way back, not necessarily in person, but I've known you through the internet since going all the way back to 2006. I want to preface some of this stuff so people don't accuse me of just saying, "Oh, you're only sticking up for Tyler because you're your friend." I want to preface some shit too. We've known each other since 2006. It was a Buffalo Bills blog. It was Buffalo Football Report, right?
That's what right. It was? I was in college.
You were in college.
Well, I went to St. John Fisher my freshman year, and then I transferred to Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the football career, D3. It lasted a year. I'm like, I'm gonna stick with the sports writing thing. But went to Syracuse, Newhouse. And I think it was there. I think on the side, I just kind of did some stuff with Scout. And I don't know how we connected, but you did some writing.
You were the person in charge of that. I was trying to blog, and I don't know how our paths crossed initially, but I know that I wrote for the website that you ran. And this is all the way going back to 2006. So like I said, I've known you for a long time. I've gotten to know you as a person a lot through the years. Think you're a really cool dude. And again, I want to preface all this shit ahead of time. Also, your wife, I've known for a long time. In fact, I think I knew your wife before you met your wife.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We've had a long, good relationship. I know you as a person. I know what kind of person you are. I know what you bring to the table in terms of obviously writing, of course, but also as a human being. And I just wanted to put some of that out there before we get going, so people just know that when I ask you some of these questions, I know that they're questions that fans are going to want answered. And I also know you well enough to know that you're very open and honest about your feelings. You're not going to sugarcoat things. And I just felt it was important to put that out, because let's start there. Because if we talk about anything else, people are just going to say, well, I want to hear about the Sean McDermott stuff. So let's not even put that off. Normally,
I'm here to talk about Romeo Dobbs and that 2-part series that came out last. What's going on here?
I like Romeo Dobbs, by the way. I got him on my Media Dynasty football team. He's a keeper. But anyway, you trying to throw me off too. You're doing it on purpose here, drinking Miller Lights and trying to throw me off.
No. I would drink a Spotted Cow if you had those. I should have brought some back from Wisconsin.
I screwed up, by the way, not having a better beer selection for you.
Are you kidding me?
You came over, it was Miller Light and Coors Light. I think I had a couple of Vizzies maybe in the fridge.
This is currency in Wisconsin, man. It's bringing me back to those days.
Yeah.
Milwaukee Journal Sentinel. Yeah.
So you dropped the series, okay? It was December 7th, 3-part series. Everybody knows about it. Not everybody read it. Everybody thinks they read it because everybody has an opinion. All right, let's just start there. But it's a 3-part series called The McDermott Problem. I want you to, let's begin here. Talk about the process of writing this 3-parter, which ended up being over 20,000 words, which you talked to 25 people, at least 25 people for this article. I want you to talk about the process of it, when you wrote it, why originally you decided this was the time to write it, because one of the many things that fans who did not like the article were complaining about anyways, the timing. So let's address that first, but talk about the process of putting the article together, why you did it, and in your view, which matters because you're the one who put it out there, the timing of it all after the Philly loss, the bye week.
So I go along, I cover the whole NFL, right? Yeah. I cover the league through this long form lens. I'm writing these 5, 6, 7, 8,000 word stories, series, trying to, I mean, we've gotten into it before. I guess I don't have to give the whole spiel of like what Go Long is and why it exists, but the whole goal of my site, why I created my own company, was to take fans behind the curtain.
Yeah.
There is an entirely different pro football from the one that is portrayed at the podium, right? In press conferences.
Sure.
And those serve a purpose. So does open locker room. I'm in the locker rooms as much as I can be across the NFL. But I think that the fans deserve substance, right? Like the fans have questions about not just the Bills, but any team. And the fans are the ones spending their hard-earned money on tickets, on ridiculously priced beers, on $70 parking. They're the ones that make the NFL this multi-billion-dollar monstrosity. So that's who I serve. Like the people who genuinely want to know what in the hell's going on behind the scenes. I write for those people. You know, if there's people on Twitter/X, you know, sloshing around in the pigsty with they have no interest in clicking a link and learning, no curiosity on wanting to know what the hell is going on, whether it's the Bills and Sean McDermott or the Green Bay Packers, anything. We can get into the Packers. That's another story that kind of relates to this fallout.
Mm-hmm.
But like, yeah, like those are the people I write for. So I did like a column after everything, you know, back then. I might have been like Monday or Tuesday after the regular season Chiefs game, kind of explain like why Go Long exists. Like we write for you. If you're interested in learning, like if you want to know what really goes on behind the scenes, I'm going to talk to as many people as I possibly can to get answers.
Mm-hmm.
So your question on the timing of it?
Yeah. What made you win? And I know you've answered this before. Let me put this out there too. You got your own show. You got your own podcast. I've heard it. I've listened to you regularly. I know you've talked to Jim about this as well. You covered some of this on your own show. And I know you've done other shows and
sure.
stuff like that for sure. But I feel like this, like if somebody has a problem with your article, or if somebody doesn't like you, if somebody thinks you just hate the Buffalo Bills and you want to bury them, and that's what your motivation is, they're probably, if they're destroying your article, they're probably not listening to your podcast and probably listening to your explanation,
right.
talking about the timing and what made you decide. So there's a lot of people listening right now who might have a neutral opinion right now. For those people, I kind of want you to describe what was the premise. Like, when did you decide that I need to write? This is an article that's worth doing. This is a feature.
I mean, I started talking to players and coaches as early as June, July. I mean, this was a huge season for the Buffalo Bills.
Sure.
Right? You've got an all-galaxy quarterback in Josh Allen. Let's start there. You have a generational talent. One, I'll admit, like early on, I think I launched Go Long with a 2-part series, like the pressure is on Josh Allen, with the impetus of that being, this is a team and an owner I should say, that loved Patrick Mahomes.
Oh,
and
sure.
Right, he was infatuated with, so I had that series, put that out, and it hits you at some point that this dude is special. Like Josh Allen is one in the way he plays, but one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the league. So obviously into the season, there was a mountain of expectations on the heels of a ton of playoff heartbreak.
Sure.
You know, you've got Deshaun Watson and the Texans erasing that 16-0 deficit. You've got 13 seconds, obviously. An AFC championship in between to that. I'm jumping all over the place, try to keep them straight. And then the Cincinnati Bengals lost in the snow. So year to year to year to year, I think that going into this 2023 season, Super Bowl expectations were Super Bowl or bust.
Sure.
The team itself put the Vince Lombardi banner up in the field house.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. Like, I commend Sean McDermott and the Bills for making it clear, like, this is the goal.
Yep.
Number one, it's the Super Bowl, because that Super Bowl window is open right now while Josh Allen is playing this way. And I've written several Bills stories before, the 13-second story explaining what happened that night at Arrowhead.
Mm-hmm.
Columns being critical of Sean McDermott in the Cincinnati game, being critical of the rhetoric in March, trying to neuter your quarterback. To me, was kind of insane to even put those thoughts in his head. that maybe you should slide, maybe you should step out of bounds, maybe you should change your game. What? Like, no, like, leave Josh Allen alone. Like, let him be himself and worry about other things, the line, weapons. So yeah, I get it. I've written a lot about this team, a lot about this coach. And so
can I cut you off of one statement? Because this is what I find one of the most ironic things, like where I find the most irony from Bills fans who think that you just flat out hate the Bills and you hate Sean McDermott. If you actually go into that series and read it, you read the follow-up column and some of the other stuff you've written previous to this season, the funny part is from a Bills fan point of view, and I am a Buffalo Bills fan, and I do not try to hide that, okay? You're more pro Josh Allen being on another level, on that level with that only maybe two other quarterbacks in the NFL are, and you're constantly hammering that home. You're hammering home how good Josh Allen is just as much, if not more, than you're hammering the shortcomings of the head coach. I just wanted to put that out there because I'm like, dude, you can interpret it one way, but I'm looking at it as, like literally the third part of your series was about Josh Allen. You know what I mean? Like just pretty much about him. And I'm like, you're propping up Josh Allen on a pedestal is just as much, if not more, than you're hammering Sean McDermott for some of his mistakes. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's kind of the whole point of it.
I got a short attention
honestly,
span,
though, that's it, though. Like going into this season, it's you have an opportunity right now with this quarterback playing the way he plays, his unique way. That opportunity ain't gonna last forever. Like I said, I covered the Packers at the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel and Aaron Rodgers. Those windows can come and go. I think after Green Bay won a Super Bowl in 2010, the assumption was they're going to be back. They're going to be back. They weren't back. So just being a reporter, right? Just reaching out to people. I didn't really have this grandiose plan to drop a 3-part series on this exact date. It was just doing my job, right? Talking to former coaches, former people in the building, former players, as much as I possibly can. I wanted to be as honest and upfront with the readers as I could, because I get it. Like people who read the 21,000 words, they'll be like, there's not a lot of current Bills voices in this, which is an understandable criticism, because they are one of the few teams who don't credential go long. Like, that's their prerogative. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
There is zero grudge. It's team to team. And for the most part, these teams know I've covered the NFL since 2010, whenever it was. And they know I want to sit down with players at length. Could be an hour, could be over lunch, could be over dinner. And it's tell a story that's deeper than whatever the hell we're going to get on social media. So that's why I wrote at the top of the story, like, here's to give everybody background, the reporting on this story. I just talked to everybody that I possibly could who's been through that building. And I'm getting around to answering your question, I guess. But that's it. Like, I just, one conversation kind of led to the next, and I wanted to see how this season went. Right? How is it if they start 12-0? There's no McDermott Problem series. They started 6-6, and the series wasn't done after that Denver game. Hell, if it was done after that Denver game, I mean, that was a game that I think a lot of fans are wondering what's going on here.
Most mad I've ever been at Sean McDermott throughout his entire Bills tenure, maybe with the exception of 13. And at any point of the regular season, the Denver game was as mad as I've ever been at Sean McDermott, because you call 2 timeouts and somehow you got 12 guys on the field at the end of a game and give a team literally for all the mistakes Buffalo made during that game. The game was over. Literally, the game was over, dude. He missed a field goal. The clock read 0. The game was over, and there's a yellow flag because they did not communicate, and they had 12 guys out there. Now it's Matthew Smiley. It's on him as well. Anyway, I keep cutting you off because, dude, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to warn you, man. I got a short attention span, so if I don't get my shit in, I'm going to forget about it while you're talking.
Got all night, man. We can do this as long as you want.
But so you decide to after the Philly game, I mean, like you said, this has been in the making for a while. You've been talking to people for a while, but it was after the Philly game where they blow another late lead and lose in overtime going into a bye week too, where you said, this is the time to get it done. So you really went to pounding at that point. Just how about the process of, forget about any controversy, any fan reaction, good or bad for a second. Just talk about the actual process of putting something together that lengthy, like I said, 3 parts, 20,000 words, just the workflow. Like,
Yeah.
do you work for very long periods of time without stopping? Do you do it more like incrementally? Like, what's your process when you put out something like that? Do you not sleep for days, basically?
I mean, the Denver game, it was I mean, that's the kick in the butt, right? Let's
Sure.
okay, wow, this season is going a direction here. And I continued to talk to players then. You know, that's when I'm doing one of these big series, I don't want to stop reporting. I wanted to just keep reporting, keep talking to people, because it just leads you down all of these different rabbit holes. But yeah, that's probably when I started like sitting down and really transcribing and piecing thoughts together and writing. In that Philadelphia game, I think a lot of fans probably felt the same way. You're watching that game, and it is the Bills, McDermott, Allen era in a nutshell, where Josh Allen plays out of his freaking mind again. Unbelievable game out of Josh Allen. And it's not enough. And again, the defense breaks. And again, there's a coaching blunder central to it all. The Philly kneel, whatever you want to call that, to just succumb, to give in, to surrender in that moment and not give Josh Allen a chance. It's like, dude, 2 years ago, Patrick Mahomes had 13 seconds and you lost that game. So, and I knew there was a bye week after that. So it gives you a little time to maybe write and piece stuff together. And yeah, the series came out then because that's when the series was done, right? Like the timing
Plus,
argument,
then it just makes more sense too. Like, if you're gonna write, if that's your work, it makes sense after losing to Denver and losing to Philly. If they go and they beat Denver, they go and beat Philly, it probably doesn't make as much sense, because part of the nucleus of your story is the Sean McDermott coaching blunders, which were on full display more than ever, Denver and Philly.
I think I have a finger on the pulse of the area. Out of that game, there were some people wondering what's it really like there at One Bills Drive.
Mm-hmm.
What's it really like with Sean McDermott running the show? What are the problems here? There's a curiosity. There are a lot of questions being asked, and to me, the cowardly thing to do is to have all of these conversations, all of this reporting beyond the 9/11 speech. You know, that's one of several anecdotes,
Sure,
several examples of how Sean McDermott has treated assistants, how it got to this point, you know, the inside story, you know, even more detail on 13 seconds, what happened with Leslie Frazier, the Brian Dable dynamic, the Josh Allen dynamic. There's a lot there. And to me, the cowardly thing to do is just to sit on it and to wait for the coach to be fired and then put a story out 2 days later. That's usually what happens
sure.
in the business, Pat. Like you see that all of the time. Some of the best pieces of journalism are that, like, a coach is fired and then the series comes out a few days later. All the dirty laundry is aired. Look, I'll take the bullets, whatever. If people are angry about the timing, what are you going to do? Like,
Right.
what are you going to tell those people? Because I think that with interest as high as it is at that moment, people wanting to know what's going on behind the scenes, how did it get to this point? Why is this team 6-6 in a Super Bowl or bust season? That's the time to do it.
Yeah.
You're meeting the fan demand. They're interested in the substance and what's happening behind the scenes at that moment. So yeah, that was strange to hear that criticism, because you know what it is though, Pat? I think there's a lot of fans who don't understand journalism. They don't know that, you know, there are some exceptions in this market. You can go down that road if you want, but they don't know that if you're in the media, you don't care who wins and who loses. You're just trying to tell a story. You're just trying to answer questions. Like you're driven by that compass, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if people want cheerleading, if they want to be pandered, if they just, you know, want to hear what they want to hear, there are people for that, and people have filled that niche, right, in this market. There's some really good journalists too, some really good media members. Don't get me wrong, but there's a lot of pandering. There is. So I think if you're kind of spammed with the pandering and spammed with practice clips of a wide receiver shaking his butt to a song that's edited, and that's what you're getting day to day to day to day, and that's that becomes the expectation. It's going to be a little strange when somebody talks to 25 people and there's a lot of good. Hello, Josh Allen. There's some bad and there's some ugly. It's going to stand out. And I knew that was the case. I knew it would be the case, but maybe that's why, to answer your question, there were a lot of questions about the timing. Sure. How could you do this to the Bills at this time? Like, if you're objective, like you don't care if a team wins or loses. And there are a lot of people in the media who are driven by that same compass. Like you don't cheer for the team. Now there are a lot in the media who do openly cheer for the team. So that's why I don't even get mad. Like if fans want to like send me the nastiest tweets and the nastiest messages and say things I can't even repeat on this podcast, that's fine. I don't care. Like say whatever you want. Because you almost don't even blame those people because they're living on Twitter, hitting refresh, just living in that world, being inundated with that spin. So it's going to be a little different when there's something a little different that's published.
When you said pandering, my inner self starts laughing immediately. And I say that because our mutual friend, Joe, Buffalo Wins, calls me pandering Pat. So I can't hear the word pandering without a little bit of
I'm talking to a pandering Pat right now.
I bring him up because if I'm correct, your story dropped out of Thursday morning, correct? I'm almost positive it did.
Right.
He sent me a message instantly on Facebook and told me the story and sent me the link. So I went and I read it. And that's where I kind of got pissed off at you because you kind of ruined my Thursday morning into my Thursday afternoon, man. I have all this shit to do and I ended up spending hours reading.
You read it.
Of course I read it. Of course I read it. But I want to say mid to late afternoon on Thursday, honest to God. And again, I talk football and sports a lot on this podcast, but I also have a lot of media people on. I follow the media. When I was a little kid, I wanted to be a writer. I've been very open about that before. So I've always been kind of locked in on what the media does, good, bad, and the ugly. This was honest to God. And I truly mean this. And I'm not saying this because you're sitting next to me. This was the strongest divided reaction to a series that I've ever seen in my life, ever. At least in Buffalo. I can't speak for other markets. In Buffalo, this story, when it dropped, the first 24 to maybe 36 hours was the strongest, most divided reaction that I've ever seen from Bills fans. People loved it. People hated it. No in between. I don't think there was much in between.
And you know what?
All.
And Pat, if they read it, if they, spent $8, the price of a cup of coffees to read it, great. And if I'm saying if they hated it and they had gripes and criticisms, great. Like that's why I did a couple happy hours welcoming on anybody that had any questions. Like bring it on. Like let's talk about it completely. Because as you know, there were a lot of people, and this is just the society we live in. Like this is just the sign of the times. And I wasn't surprised by it. I mean, this happens with every story. This is an extreme case where, a series comes out, a story comes out, and people don't read it, but they have a strong opinion on it because they see the headlines that are aggregated. I think there are a lot of people in the media who didn't even read it.
See a small clip, a small blurb on Twitter,
right?
Having an excerpt from the story or two or something like that, and they form their own opinion. No, I agree with that. If you don't read it, you really don't deserve to have an opinion.
Two tells. Sorry, I'm the one interrupting now. Sorry. Like if somebody said, "Oh, your buddy Isaiah McKenzie, he gave you all the goods," like then I clearly know you didn't read it because yes, I did a show with Isaiah McKenzie at Go Long for 2 seasons. Isaiah loves Sean.
Yeah.
He goes out of his way to say how that relationship, it was like something he valued. Like the same thing with a Taiwan. That was another tell. 25 anonymous sources. No. Taiwan Jones, Isaiah McKenzie, Lee Smith, Patrick DeMarco. Probably forgetting people at the top of my head. Like
that was a blast from the past, by the way. I was surprised to see Patrick DeMarco in the story. Nothing against him. I like Patrick DeMarco.
Well, he was there. He was a leader that Sean really relied on early on to kind of set the culture. And that was, there's a, believe it or not, if there's people listening to this that haven't read, there's a lot of good to Sean. I mean, what he did culturally, it was a shit show with Rex, more so than I even thought it was.
Yeah.
I mean, they're telling a player to get into the game and he's not even dressed. He's up in the suite.
Yeah.
Like he had to clean up a lot. So he deserves credit for ending the drought, restoring order and discipline, guiding the team through the Damar Hamlin, unprecedented situation. A player's heart stops on the field. He's dead, and he's brought back to life. That is unbelievable what he did. It's just clear to me, and I wrote this, that this, to me personally, looks like a team maxed out with this coach that's tight in situations, that's wasting a talent in Josh Allen. But that was a tell. Then the third tell was, your buddy Jim Monis. He's just jealous. Like
a lot of that. I saw a lot of that
on our podcast. Like Jim is the co-host of the Go Long Show, one of our 3 podcasts that go along. Jim repeatedly praises Sean McDermott for firing him and Doug Whaley. Like says we should have been fired. He has said that several times and gives him he is the one who recommended Sean to be interviewed for, him and Doug led that search. Sean gets the interview. Terry and Kim love him. He's hired. He becomes the one voice. Doug and Jim are fired after the draft, and he's got nothing but great things to say.
Yeah.
About me. So that was to your point earlier. That was a tell that if somebody criticized it, that they didn't read it.
Sure.
Now a ton of people did read it. I don't want people to get the wrong idea. A ton of people did read it and had opinions all over the place.
Sure.
And I love interacting with those people.
And I know you well enough. Again, this goes back to me prefacing me knowing you as a person. Somebody reads this article and they take some issue with some points of it. You're fine with that. You respect that. I think the majority of people who love the article are people who like you and like your work and subscribe to Go Long. I think that's fair to say, where I think a lot of people who pass it off as shit and hater, stuff like that, didn't read it because they probably are not subscribed to Go Long, and they just they form an opinion based on, like I said, basically a couple of excerpts or whatever on Twitter. Which to that point, what do you say to the people? Because the one word I've used, or I've heard, I should say, a ton. The one term I've heard a ton of throughout this process is Tyler Dunne's hit piece. And I heard that time and time again. If I had $1 for every time I saw a Tyler Dunne's hit piece somewhere tweeted out or wherever, I probably would have a lot of money to buy some more Miller Lights right now. But seriously, what do you say to people who accuse you of this being nothing more than a hit piece, or that you have a personal axe to grind against Sean McDermott and the Buffalo Bills, which you kind of addressed already earlier when you talked about not having access, but you had that in your story that's not really what any of this shit is all about. But what do you say to those people who call it a hit piece or an axe to grind?
Well, I'd say to read it first, right? Like
sure.
Take the time to read it and then judge for yourself. I think a lot of people using that term didn't read it, and a lot of people using that term maybe love Sean McDermott as the head coach and think that everything's great, which is their prerogative, right? Like if that's the opinion that you take, that's fine. I've got friends who I've texted with and talked with, and they're, I kind of created that term in the column after the season, right? Drought brain, like just having some fun with it.
Elaborate on that a little bit, because I actually had that in my notes. So you just saved me having to ask you this question.
I just think that there's it was the same thing with a lot of people in Green Bay terrified of life on the other side of Aaron Rodgers. Like you're scared to death of, oh my God, what's it going to be like on the other side?
Sure.
And I went all in on Jordan Love early. I talked to enough people around him, believed in the way he works, his game, his football brain, his potential, and the infrastructure that Green Bay was building to kind of like going on like, look, you should trade Aaron Rodgers now and get if Russell Wilson's getting 3 first-round picks, imagine what Aaron Rodgers would have got off of an MVP season. They didn't do it. They waited a year. It cost them $150 million. What are you going to do? But I think it's a similar thing where there's a fear and fans, some fans, a section of fans are a little terrified of what's it like on the other side of this. Is it going to be another 17 years of Malarkeys and Chan Gailey's and Gerons and Greg Williamses and Rexes? And it doesn't have to be that way. Like those coaches, they didn't have Josh Allen as their quarterback. They had JP Losman and Kelly Holcomb and EJ Manuel. Like it was a different world. So I that's where the drought brain came on. Like, so I think to get back to your question about people that call it, maybe that's part of it too, is people think the times are really, really good right now, and it could be really, really bad. So anything that kind of points out the missed opportunities with this team in this moment of time, and it's critical of the coach, and please, if there's anything that's factually incorrect, I'm all ears. Then if people are thinking in those terms, what are you going to say? Like if they say axe to grind, if they say hit people, you're not going to change their opinion. But
Right.
that's why I'm writing for people that are genuinely curious, genuinely want to learn, are going into it with an open mind, and want to explore things behind the scenes that have not been explored before.
Can I bring up a part of the article? And of course, I tell you anything I say out of respect, and that I read that shit.
Yeah.
I read everything you put out, even if it's not a team that or a player that
if
I
something
necessarily
pisses you
care
off,
about.
you can tell
Doesn't
me.
piss me off. It doesn't piss me off. Doesn't piss me off. But the one thing I think, looking back, if I were you, and I'm sure you hear this from a million people, if I were you, I would have did this, I would have did this. The only thing that I think led some credence to people or set people up to assume that you might have some kind of personal beef with the team itself is when you said, and I understand why, especially after you just explained it tonight, but that you don't have access to the Buffalo Bills, that they're one of the few teams in the league that won't give you the access that you should be able to have to be able to do the work that you do. Maybe having that in there, even though I understand why you did that, I think maybe that kind of teed up the golf ball a little bit on the first hole for people to say, oh, he can't get credentialed and the team won't help him out and he's just bitter. So he's going to go after them. You know what I'm saying?
Then
that's my assessment.
That's fine. You know what? And I knew that there would be people who think that.
Hmm?
I think I owe it to the readers to be honest,
sure,
to be transparent. And I wanted to be as open and honest as I possibly could be, because I think a question is, why isn't like this player quoted? Why isn't Sean quoted? And I want to be here. And here's how to answer that. Like, go back through the archives that go long. I still sat down with a ton of players, Bills players.
Oh, I know.
I still, and I told Bills PR this, we had a conversation.
We had a show for 2 years.
Right. A few conversations and it was cordial. It was fine. Like they just said that they weren't going to credential go long. It wasn't like we were screaming at each other.
Sure.
It was fine. I've had that conversation with teams, right? Like it happens. But I told the Bills, but I tell other teams, like I still have a job to do. I still have a lot of readers and subscribers here in Western New York that have an appetite for Bills coverage. So I will continue to cover the team. And I did that through the Isaiah McKenzie show. I did it through sitting down with Damar Hamlin at Elmo's for Wings to tell his story before, he nearly lost his life. I mean, his story is unbelievable.
Sure.
Got to think it back.
Taiwan.
And Damar said that like half of his close friends like died, but over his childhood.
Yeah.
I mean, just an unbelievable story. People want to check that out. But yeah, Taiwan Jones, Deion Dawkins, Devin Singletary, Quentin Morris, Naeem Hines, just at the top of my head. I mean, there's been a few every year. And I think that if people read those stories, then judge your opinion. I mean, to race to axe to grind, and that just shows you that those people aren't reading Go Long and they're not subscribing, and that's their prerogative.
Sure.
Whatever.
Sure.
But the Bills aren't the only team. They're one of the few. For the most part, Go Long is credentialed by just about every team that I've reached out to, because I worked at the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel covering the Packers for 4.5 years, the Buffalo News covering the Bills, and then Bleacher Report for 5 years doing the whole NFL. So I've kind of been parachuting around the whole league. So people kind of know my reputation and the type of stories that I want to tell that are, humanizing profiles, deep dives on teams. And yeah, there's no X to grind at all. If that's where the Bills stand on it, that's fine. I'm just letting the readers know.
Sure.
Because I think it's different too. I mean, this is kind of another conversation to have, but when I started Go Long, it's within Substack, right? It's a more personal connection with readers.
Mm-hmm.
They're subscribing to your Substack, your newsletter. It's a little more one-to-one. You're right in their email inbox. It's not a major corporation, right? It's not ESPN.
It's much more intimate.
It's not, Fox. It's intimate. So, I mean, that relationship. I really feel like we have a community of readers and subscribers, and I try to be upfront all the time with them through the happy hours. We do a chat every Sunday. I mean, just last night for the games, was it last night? Yeah, Sunday. We had, hundreds upon hundreds of comments in there, get up to 700, 800 sometimes. And we're talking to people from all over the world. Yeah. So it's a connection, that's part of the reason I love doing this. I go along. You have a real connection with your readers that I never had at Bleacher Report. You're just kind of this faraway company. And I got a lot of good things to say about BR. They did a lot for me, but it's a bigger company. You're not building that relationship. And that's so when you think about it through that lens, yeah, I'm going to be honest. And it's with a story like this, that's this explosive, where I know there's going to be a lot of questions. Like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Honesty is the best policy, right? Yeah. My parents taught me anything. It's just to be honest.
Yeah.
Like shit, we can sit here and talk for 5 hours if you want, Pat, because I'll do it. If anybody actually wants to talk about this beyond Twitter, let's do it.
Well,
because I think if you're just honest and you're upfront with people, that's just the best way to live in general.
So when the story drops, okay, I knew the reaction was going to be strong. And I was actually, and I'm staying out of it too. I'm not going to try not to go down these rabbit holes on Twitter. And I failed just miserably, by the way, doing that. But if people want to say bad shit about the article, let them, like you said, your opinion, but read it and then have your own opinion. What got me going and what got me into some scraps, I guess we'll call them, internet scraps, whatever the hell you want to call them, with some people, fans, not just fans too. And I'm not going to name people or outlets, but let's just say some content creators as well. All right, let's just put that out there, that are taking personal shots at you as a human and at your career. And that's as somebody, and again, going back to the beginning of the show when I was prefaced that I know you well. So whatever they want to say about your work, okay, that's subjective. It's kind of like music, it's art, it's podcasting, it's not for everybody. Okay, it's cool. But when they start making it personal and people are saying Tyler Dunne, besides the hit piece shit, but saying shit like, you're in mommy's basement blogging and, you have your little website, like you can't get a job. I got news for people. I mean, you're not going to say this shit. I'll say it. Listen, if you're watching the show or listening to the show, I could make you one promise right now on behalf of Tyler. If Tyler didn't want to do Go Long TD and Tyler wanted to work at a major media outlet, I promise you, Tyler Dunne will be working right now for a major media outlet. So when I hear shit like that, that's what bothered me more than anything else. You can't, you're just trying to get attention, mommy's basement, this and that, and all that stuff. The personal stuff really, it got under my skin quickly too. And to the point where that's why I stepped in and started beefing with some people. Cause I'm like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about at that point. These people don't, again, criticize the article, especially if you read it, even if you just saw an excerpt and you think that's wrong, whatever. Okay. But when you're making it personal and talking about you not having any career or that you can't do anything else, or the little mommy's blogger basement and stuff like that, who doesn't know shit about you as a person or your career. Or here's the best thing, 25 sources, with air quotes and this and that, how you ain't got no sources. I'll tell you another thing on behalf of him that he won't say. And if you're with the media, I promise you, you know this right now. And I'm talking to the mainstream media who are probably watching or listening to the show. There's few dudes, forget about Buffalo. There's only a handful of people probably in this market period who have the Rolodex that you do. It's almost comical. And I remember hearing stories way before this article about your Rolodex. It's like on almost like that what the hell was the guy from NBC, the famous dude, Peter King?
Yeah,
you're on like that Peter King level with the Rolodex, man. So that's the shit that really got under my skin.
I appreciate you, Pat. Thanks for
a nice little personal rant of mine.
Thanks for the rant.
I want to take a real quick break to come back because I want to talk about the reaction that the Bills had from this, because forget about just the fans. It's the team. It's Sean McDermott. We're reacting to this too. So real quick break, come back, and we're going to hit on that. All right, I am back here in studio with my buddy Tyler Dunne. Again, this episode is brought to you by Imperial Pizza. 2 locations, the staple location, of course, in South Buffalo, 1035 Abbott Road. Also, brand new location, 1665 Main Street, City of Buffalo, near Canisius College. Make sure you go there and check it out. All right. So first half of the show, we pretty much, talked about stuff that we knew we were going to talk about. I want to talk about the reaction from the team. Like, did you expect the level of reaction that this story generated? I mean, you talked about it. You knew when this article came out that there was going to be strong reactions from Bills fans, whether they were for the article, whether they would hate the article. That to me wasn't that much of a surprise, although the extent of it certainly was. But this just went way beyond this, man. This went to the Bills. And 24 hours or so after this series dropped, Sean McDermott's at a press conference or having his presser, and he's addressing the 9/11 stuff. I mean, in your wildest dreams, did you have expectations that this was going to have this type of reaction nationally? Because once that happened with Sean, everybody's covering this around the country.
Right. You never really know, what are those anecdotes, details from a story that are going to gain a little traction and compel a player or a team to respond. I knew in this series, it's not every day that a professional coach of a team gathers everybody around and says, be more like the Al-Qaeda terrorists on 9/11,
right?
And the way they communicated. So I obviously have a feeling that's something that's probably going to get picked up. Now, personal opinion, I thought there were probably 8 or 9.
He addressed it himself though the next day.
He did, yeah. I mean, I just thought that there was definitely a lot more in there. Not to go back to the media, I thought it was interesting that media-wise, the reaction more so when the series comes out, it's with the exception of a couple people, right? There were some that shared it and appreciative that they shared it. There was a lot that just like treated the whole thing like it was toxic, and stayed away, hundreds of miles away from the series, and basically just waited for Sean McDermott to have the press conference address the 9/11 story. I mean, he confirmed it all. Everything he said is what was what I wrote, that he used that reference to the team. An hour later or so, whatever it was, returns back to the team. As I wrote, Kyle Williams played a big part in kind of convincing Sean to get out there. He was in town to work with Ed Oliver and some guys, and address it because it did piss off a lot of guys. It pissed off players. I talked to the players, coaches, they had an impact. It wasn't just this instant joke that was brushed aside. No, it had an effect. So, yeah, I mean, he's not going to deny it. So to Sean's credit, he admitted the thing happened.
Well, there were some fans before he spoke in the first 18 to 20 hours from when the story drops to when Sean speaks the next day, who I think thought that was bullshit. Like it wasn't factually true because I've never read that report before about 9/11. So him addressing it confirmed that it was true is what I'm getting at. So a lot of people are like, holy shit, that's really fucked up. At the time.
That's a good point too. Like there's a lot of detail in the 21,000 words. This detail is not invented out of thin air, right? Right. It's not this fantasy, right? It's not fiction. I will stand by all of my reporting and this and everything I've written. And there were a lot of flashbacks to, it kind of gets into what you were just talking about earlier with the reaction from fans and nasty things being said. I mean, I went through this all in 2019 at Bleach Report with the Packers story. Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, trying to explain, Mike McCarthy at that point had been fired. They hired Matt LaFleur. It looks like the window is closing for Aaron Rodgers. And I had a ton of sources. To your point, I'm just trying to constantly talk to as many people as I possibly can around a situation like that. So that story at Bleach Report comes out. Similar reaction. There's an intense curiosity from the fan base to learn, to eat this up, to want to know what's going on. In that case, Aaron Rodgers sits down with his buddy Jason Wilde, an ally in the media who he did a show with, and meticulously goes right through the story. Almost like paragraph to paragraph, pushing back on stuff. He called it a smear attack. He said that I was just a writer trying to make a name for myself. I mean, he went after me hard.
I remember.
This is Aaron Rodgers, right?
Yeah.
It's not just, a fan on Twitter. This is arguably the best player in the sport. But I knew everything I had was solid. and I stood by it. I didn't react to what Aaron Rodgers had to say. And I knew that, as they say, the truth sets you free. That eventually the more personal stuff in that story, players on the record and off the record, in that case, speaking on Aaron, that eventually, people can kind of make the judgments they want on Aaron Rodgers themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that people can make the judgments they want on Aaron Rodgers today. Yes. So that to go through that, it was, I guess it's important for anybody's career, like to be honest and unafraid and follow your own moral compass and report. And yeah, anonymous sourcing is going to be a part of these kind of stories, because if you want to get a lot of truth and substance and, get the elbows dirty and work those corners, there are going to be people who will express that truth that don't want their name attached. It's not ideal. Trust me, I wish everybody put their name to it.
Sure.
Don't get me wrong. But I think that it behooves the fan and like I said, the person who's pouring so much money into this monstrosity that is the NFL. They deserve the truth. Like they deserve these anecdotes. They deserve this detail. And if they don't want it, then what are you going to do? Like, okay, then don't read it.
Yeah.
If you want it, it's there for you. And it's on you to trust the reporter, in this case, myself. And like I said, I'll stand by everything.
Did you get a lot of media requests, like in the days that followed the story, especially after Sean spoke, and this became more than just a Buffalo Bills story? Like I said, this became national. This became a national story. Did you start to get a decent amount of media requests?
I like to go on radio stations,
radio,
and that kind of
podcasts, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it was. It was, like I said, similar deal to Green Bay, where people want to talk about it. It's in the news. I understand it. It's it's the nature of the beast. Like, and it's by no means do I want anybody to think I'm a victim here. Like, people can say whatever they want. I don't care. Like they can say whatever they like.
I think it's important. Let me say, I didn't mean to cut you off, Ty, but I think it's important to know that I feel in the case of the people that have really hated this the most, I feel like that's a loud but a minority.
Right.
If that makes sense. I think by and large, most people either just they love the work that you put into it, and they might agree with all of what you wrote. They might agree with some parts more than others, but I think by and large, people liked and appreciate what you do, and specifically what they put out. Whereas the people, especially, I mean, let's just call it what it is on Twitter, so some media or content creator people out there, a few of them at least anyway, they're that loud minority. And I just, it kind of makes it feel like, well, this is such a negative thing. I really don't buy that, because by and large, people I've talked to or things I see, more people actually enjoyed the work and enjoyed the read.
I mean, and that's the nature of Twitter, Pat, right? Like it can make you think like that is the mainstream opinion. That is the mainstream thought on anything, on any story, any topic. It is microscopic in the real world. And I think, running my own business, golongtd.com, within the Substack community, all of that, and when you look at the numbers and the metrics, and even when you're anecdotally interacting with people in those chats and those happy hours, you quickly realize that, like you just said, Twitter is not real life. Like it is.
No,
it is a very, very loud, often ornery place, but a necessary place too. Like I don't want to just sit here and shit on Twitter too, because you've got to use it, right? Like you've got to. It is a delivery platform. I mean, you are dispersing your work or your opinions to a large audience. But it's not as intimate as a Substack. And that's kind of why I love the idea of whether it's Substack or any newsletter, I think we're going to see a lot more people in media do this. I mean, if you create your own thing, whether you're writing about sports, politics, the world, music, whatever. And then I think it's just good for a civilization. Like people can kind of take their brains back. They are subscribing for you. They want your perspective. Mm-hmm. They want your reporting. They want your work. You do the same exact thing, Pat. Like it's very one-to-one. Like it's real. It's substantive. And like I said, you're kind of taking your brain back in a way, because if you just live on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. God, I even hate saying TikTok. Hopefully that's, blown to smithereens.
You will cancel go long before you start actively ever using TikTok, won't you?
It has to cease to exist by the time my kids are teenagers.
I'm guilty though. I use it.
Do you really? Oh, I gotta end this podcast right now.
I have to, man. Gotta do what I gotta do.
But it's like what I'm saying is just like all of that stuff is you're kind of like you're inundated with all of these. They have your information. They're throwing ads in your face that you, whether you don't even know you're giving them information, they're trying to lead you down these rabbit holes, and you're losing your brain. You're losing the ability to think for yourself. You're pissing away your whole day just hitting the refresh button, scrolling and doom scrolling away. Like I hope that there's a snapback in society where people say, no, I'm going to hit pause on life and read a story and learn something.
Yeah.
And so to those people, let's go. Like I am so grateful that people wanted to subscribe to do that, because I know it's not easy. Like we're all guilty of it. We all just start scrolling away on Instagram or whatever, and it's like you're kind of losing brain cells in the process. And we got to like hit pause and be like, no, like let's just read a chapter out of a book or this newsletter I subscribe to.
I jokingly said I wanted to murder you when I read 21,000 words in your room my Thursday, but in all seriousness, I was well worth the read. Of course it was. But, and you know what, I'll kind of backtrack a little bit here. There is a market for different types of journalism. Beat reporters, at least in today's world, are, I think, maybe a little bit different than the way things used to be. It's okay. Let me compare this to music, all right? I'm going to try to make a music comparison. Hopefully I don't completely fuck this up, but I'm at least going to try. Some beat reporters out there, more positive ones, some TV people, whatever, the 14 seconds dance clips and stuff like that. Guys and girls who cover the team on a day-to-day basis. It's kind of like if this was music, they're like Taylor Swift and NSYNC and Bon Jovi. They're just putting out the hits every day.
Yeah.
You're more like fucking Alice in Chains or the Doors or your boy Jim Croce.
You see AJ Croce is coming to Buffalo?
Yeah, I did hear about that.
I can't convince Gina to go.
No.
Can you help me there?
No, I'm not.
She doesn't like Jim Croce.
No.
Yeah. I'm always blasting operator. It's kind of become a running joke, but yeah,
it's great. But seriously, what I'm saying is your style of journalism is different and obviously way different. But I'm okay for the most part with B people, because I know I have some friends. I'm not going to call any names out, but some friends who say that the media is too soft, and in some ways they are. Okay, again, without calling names, in some ways they are. But I also think by and large the media does a very good job because they're covering a team day by day.
Right.
Fans want to know every little detail. Who got dinged up in practice? What this guy had to say. Who's starting? Whatever. There's lots of stories when you're covering a beat as opposed to being a feature writer, which you are as well. So, and I don't think you were sitting there saying either, like every person who covers the beat sucks.
No, yeah, I don't want to give out
rainbows. No, and I know you're not.
I'm friends. I'm good.
Sure.
Cover the team, and they do a hell of a job, right?
Yeah, and you've covered a beat before, man. I mean, you know what it's like when you started Go Long. Like, what was the final push that made you want to do what you're doing now? Because again, I know this. If you wanted to, you could be working wherever right now, but this is your passion and what you want to do.
Totally. And I think Bleacher Report, they decided to get out of the writing business. That would have been 2020, I want to say. Yeah, like August, September 2020 is when they kind of just got rid of everybody who does features in all sports. So at that moment, there was no like animosity, no anger, none of that. It was kind of liberating in a sense to weigh out all of the options. And there were several options, don't want to speak out of turn. Newspapers, websites, local, national, could have gone a lot of different directions. And I just felt like at that point, working for a big corporation, seeing where Bleacher Report decided to go, kind of getting a sense for some directions that other places were going to go down the road. I just decided to kind of take it in my own hands, and I'd never heard of Substack. I didn't know what it was. Heard it was a newsletter platform that basically they just take a small percentage out of whatever revenue you create, and it's really user friendly. It was kind of newish at the time. And Matt, Matt Collar.
Yeah.
He's here in the Buffalo market.
Yep.
Does a great job covering the Vikings.
Sure does.
He kind of introduced me to it, and he's like, man, you should just do your NFL features and create this. And there's part of me thinking, like, I don't know, is it niche-y enough? A lot of Substacks are very niche-y. Like it serves a very specific audience. And I wasn't sure if long form storytelling was niche-y enough. And the more I thought about it, and the more I kind of saw where newspapers and sites were going, and you can't just, they're not letting you just sit down with a player, speak for a few hours, and write a 7,000 word story. That just isn't an option at a lot of places. They don't have the space, they don't have the money, they don't have the desire. And I do. Like, that's what I love doing more than, I have so much respect for Rappaport and Schefter and the newsbreakers. Like, they do a hell of a job. They've helped me spread the word on Go Long, which I'm very grateful for. But I couldn't live that way. I don't want to like stare at my phone and be very transactional and just be cranking out news in that way. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
That's not what gets me going. I like it's fun to break news here and there. I've done it, but I really want to tell stories and get to know guys. And it's a very human game. I've always been moved by the human condition, and there's so much to pro football that's special. I just wanted to just figure, all right, start Go Long, get an LLC. At that point, I think we had Ella, maybe Sonny was on the way. Yeah. Well, so we're about to have 2 kids.
I'm saying.
So there's a lot on the line. Gina's unbelievable. Stay-at-home mom with the kids, which is the hardest job in the world, obviously. So there's a lot riding on, like, all right, I'm launching this company. It better work, right? Like, I sure hope people enjoy what I put out there and want to subscribe and want to read. And I've been blown away by the support here in Western New York. Like I said, I was in Wisconsin for a number of years. A lot of Packer fans subscribe, and then it's kind of a bunch of fans scattered throughout the country and throughout the world. We had on our chat last week, we had somebody in Slovenia and another person in London. We got people in Australia, Scotland.
That's wild.
They're all over the place. It's really cool. And yeah, to kind of build it up to that point, it is a real community, which you're excited to wake up in the morning and work for those people.
And what you have this is what your passion is. And some people have passion for other things. Sal Capaccio, his passion is working for the Buffalo Bills and covering them on the radio. I don't think you could pay him $1 million to want to do something else. And that's not an insult. That's a compliment. That's his passion. That's what he loves doing. Guys like Matt, they cover the Bills. He's got a show that's doing very well, Shout, and that's his passion. This is your passion, what you do, telling these long stories. But the difference between you and some of these other guys and girls who work in the media is this is your business. To them, it's a job. If they lose this job, they're going to get another job. This is your business. Because that's another thing, by the way, that really annoyed me during this process that I would hear some people criticizing is, he's just trying to get clickbait, trying to get people. Of course he is. He's fucking running a business. I mean, you're running Go Long. That this is how you earn a living.
Steve Tasker's comment was kind of funny.
Yeah, Jesus, that was a stupid comment, by the way. Much respect for Steve and Chris Brown.
Writing an article for a profit. Okay, so Steve's doing the show for free. Like,
exactly. This is literally your business.
The other one, a beat writer, right? Monetize the struggle. And this is after declaring Sean McDermott the greatest coach in professional sports. So get bent, Belichick. Hit the road, Phil Jackson.
Andy Reid.
Sean is the greatest coach of all time. And then I'm monetizing the struggle. No, then the other part was I was clapped back upon. So take my livelihood, don't clap back on me. The dreaded clap back.
Oh, you guys and girls are all nuts out there. But no, seriously, man, it's like this is your livelihood. You're taking care of you're taking care of a family. You're feeding a family based off this. So of course it's your business. I mean, that is a really dumb thing to say. That might even bother me more than the hit piece shit.
Well, I think anybody who has any job and provides any service is compensated for it. Like, this is my job. If your toilet breaks and you call the plumber, I don't think he does it for free, right? Like,
no.
If you need help with anything around the house, you're building something breaks. But you know what? And I think that's where newspapers kind of only have themselves to blame. If you go through history, way back when, to just kind of throw all the content on this new thing called the internet for free. They've constantly been trying to fight back against that over the last 20, 25 years, because it became subconscious in the media consumer to just expect news and opinion and features and media for free. That became the expectation.
Right.
So, newspapers have themselves to blame, but I'd like to think it's coming back around to, like, people know if you want journalism, you pay for it. It's not just, I don't have ads, zero ads, zero sponsors. And I want to keep it that way. I don't want to just throw all this stuff in your face when you're reading my stories. So that, and it kind of plays into that genuine connection with readers that we've been talking about.
You also invest back into your business. Like, you get subscribers. You're not sitting at your house every day running all your stories. You're investing in your product. Right. You're going out, you're getting the road, you're doing stories with people, you're traveling to other towns as well. I can't get past the part where we were talking about Twitter and just the struggles I've had, man. I've talked about this with my wife, my son recently. So hard to have that balance, because you're right, man. You need it in a way, doing what you do, doing what I do to an extent. Now, you do yours professionally. This is just part of what I do. This isn't my living, but it is a very important part of my life. But whether it's a hobby, whether it's your profession, we need social media to an extent. That's how you're getting eyeballs and ears on your content. And a lot of the interactions are with well-meaning fans who admire what you do, and they have something useful to say sometimes. But finding that balance between that and the ugliness that's going on, I'm struggling more and more with it every day, man. I'm getting to a point where, how do I use Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it, to do what I got to do and just avoid the pitfalls. I fought last week for literally probably 2 to 3 hours at least with people about AJ Klein versus Dorian Williams against the Chiefs. And I'm thinking to myself,
nice little Tuesday, Pat.
Yeah, add up all those minutes that
I know
that you spend just going back and forth with people who you ain't going to change their mind.
No.
So it's like, and you add up all those minutes that you don't get back, and it's crazy, man. But yeah, I'm struggling with social media lately.
Yeah, it just is, but you can be in control. You know what I mean? Like, if you, that's where something like this can do so much good. And I might have mentioned it before, but I wrote a story that Monday after the series came out. We Write For You was the headline, I think. And it just kind of like crystallized in my head, like, why would any of us devote so much of our lives to this ultimate time suck? Like, why would we willingly hurl ourselves into Twitter/X? Like, as Ricky Waters once said, the great Ricky Waters, who? For what? Right? Like, why? Like, seriously, no, like, I'm running a business, and you know what motivates me? It's not interacting with somebody, like, say nasty things to on Twitter. It's feeding my family. Like, that is the ultimate motivation. Like, waking up in the morning, like, needing to report and talk to people around the NFL and find an interesting story to write that people are compelled to, like, get their credit card out and punch their information and purchase. Like, who cares what's going on at Twitter?
Yeah.
I don't.
Has this experience with this specific story, and again, you've been doing these for a long time, but this specific story, has it kind of hardened you a little bit in a way? Because Sean McDermott story, and again, I think even the 13-second story was probably 95% well received by fans universally. Whereas this story, like I said, it was just so divided. It's funny because, again, I know you, and pretty much everybody knows you as one of the nicest people around, one of the nicest cats in the business. But there's a lot of people right now who think of Tyler Dunne and think he's a Buffalo Bills hater who just wants Sean McDermott gone and is just writing hit pieces.
But what are you going to do to change that person's mind?
That's true.
The majority of people in that group didn't read it.
True. I agree.
So, I mean, if they want to think that, they can think whatever they want. It's not true. What are you going to do?
I know. But
shout it from the rooftops? They can read the volume of work at the site and draw their own conclusions.
You're better than most at taking criticism and not letting it get to you, especially if it comes from a place where, like you said, uninformed, who probably didn't even read the article. I struggle sometimes being able to accept criticism. I've had Sal Capacio's been on the show and he's talked about it. He says one of his biggest weaknesses is I wish I didn't let people who are negative towards me bother me. But it does. It bothers him, and he's admitted to this. You're better at that, but there comes a point, man, where it gets under your skin. Someone has to.
The Packer experience definitely helped.
Sure.
Because I was out there, was it July of 2011, day-to-day full-time at the Journal-Sentinel through when I came out to the Buffalo News, May or June of 2015, year one of Rex. I was out there a long time, really built up a reputation, thought about living out there permanently for a time.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked living in Wisconsin. Packer fans, very similar to Bills fans in passion. You could write about the fourth string tight end and people go nuts.
Sure.
So it was awesome. And I think to do that for so long and then come back to Western New York, this is what's really funny too. There was one person who tweeted at me saying, hey, the Packer fans ran you out of Wisconsin, you and your wife. They ran you out of Wisconsin when you did the Rodgers story. It's like, no, I moved out to Western New York in 2015. I wrote that Rodgers story in 2019.
Yeah.
And I met Gina in between. So like you're off on multiple levels there, buddy. But to go through that then, like, so you build up an audience that loves what you write and respects you and comes to expect a certain level of journalism. When I did that Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy, Ted Thompson, what the hell happened in Green Bay story at Bleacher Report, and the reaction was very similar. Yeah, that does harden you. Like, you need to stand by your beliefs in your reporting and what you wrote, and just, you can interact with people to an extent. Like you said, you're not going to change a lot of people's minds.
No.
And so be it. So be it. So that's fine. Like, I'm not, I mean, I guess it gets to you here and there, but you can't take things personal. The people who are going to say the nastiest things, by and large, they're not going to say it to your face. And by and large, they didn't even read it.
You know what I think is the biggest single problem with Buffalo Bills fans? And this is not me pissing on Buffalo Bills fans. I want to make that real clear too. By and large, Bills fans are awesome. Okay. But
I should say that too. Like, I don't want,
and I think everybody knows that.
Yes.
You feel that way.
Yeah. Shit. Like, I grew up here, friends, family, like, they're all Bills fans.
We talked about that over dinner.
Yes.
You covered the team or covered the league, so you don't really give a shit who wins. But you have a wife who's a Bills fan, family who's Bills fans. It could get tough there. But what I meant by it when I was saying that is this. I think Bills fans, because of the 17-year drought, and you talked about this, are just happy to be good and be competitive. And I remember having you on the podcast last year, early spring, at Imperial Pizza. That's when you were half dead, but you showed up anyway.
That's right.
Sick.
Sick, not hungover. I was like,
no, I meant half dead as in sick.
I had bronchitis.
He wasn't drunk. He wasn't hungover.
I had bronchitis.
He was legit sick. Right. Yeah, you had bronchitis.
I warned you too. I said, hey, I'll do it, but you might get bronchitis.
Yeah. I don't think I did afterwards. But I remember something that you said over a year ago, or almost a year ago now, I should say, resonated with me. And it's time for this organization. This kind of ties into what you ultimately wrote about Sean McDermott, the 3-part series, and the column after the season. Which, by the way, it can be a little bit of a hot take here. Not that I didn't enjoy the 3-part series, but I actually like the column even more. I just want to throw that out there.
Thanks.
But anyway, you were talking about it's time to move the goalposts some with this team. Just getting to win the division is not enough. I did write down one quote. I actually want to read this because I actually think this quote is fucking hilarious. You said, is the end goal division titles? If so, party it up. Put on that AFC East champs shirt, light yourself on fire, and hurl your body through a table. The mission in 2023 was accomplished. I've got good news too. In 2024, Buffalo will again account for the 44% of the AFC teams that make the playoffs. Another heroic dash to the tournament is imminent. I say that because I see people, I get the first year, maybe even the second year, but if you're still buying AFC East divisional champions t-shirts right now in 2023, your expectations ain't good enough. That ain't worth no $25, $30 investment for a t-shirt. Winning the division, the expectation should be more than that. And this team, to your point that you've made, is just falling short when it matters.
44% club. 44% of the teams make the playoffs in this new NFL.
Mm-hmm.
with Josh Allen, that should be the bare minimum. And hey, they clobbered the Cowboys. That was a hell of a win. Got by the Chiefs. A little help from Kadarius Toney. Hell of a win. But squeaking past Easton Stick, Bailey Zappi, Mason Rudolph. I think that there are, like, again, beyond Twitter, there are a lot of Bills fans that get it, that are demanding more, that know that this window, it doesn't stay open forever with this quarterback.
Or at least it's wide.
Especially in a Patrick Mahomes world. So every year that you're not stringing along a playoff run, realistically pushing for the Super Bowl, is a year wasted. So yeah, I that's kind of the backdrop to everything here, is that time is ticking. Josh Allen said himself, I think after that, was it the Philly game? You got to say, like, the clock is ticking. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not just ticking on that season, but now it's really ticking on this era of Buffalo Bills football. And hey, division titles are fun. Maybe this is coming from Green Bay, and I think it was a little different because they did win the Super Bowl in 2010. And then that was the expectation. You had a young Aaron Rodgers, but they would suffer like these excruciating playoff defeats to Colin Kaepernick twice, the Seattle NFC Championship game, the 2 Arizona overtime games, and one of them after that Super Bowl. It was one after another. By and large, that fan base, it was different in that sense. Like the Packer fans, they demanded the media be extremely critical when that season ended. You in the media better be examining why they didn't get to the Super Bowl. That should be the objective. That should be the goal. What's Ted Thompson doing that's holding back the Packers with Aaron Rodgers from getting to a Super Bowl? Why is Mike McCarthy still employing Dom Capers as defensive coordinator? Why is Ted not signing free agents and trotting MD Jennings out there as a starting safety and Jerron McMillan? That was the mainstream, Twitter or otherwise. It put pressure on the team. So here it's strange. The Bills are one of the best teams in the NFL. They've got one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. They've got a coach who's very good at coaching defense. The expectation should be to realistically compete for a Super Bowl, not sneak into the playoffs. Yeah. So, yes, party up. If division's the goal, smash through a table.
I will say one bit of pushback, and maybe watching the Detroit Frisco game on Sunday, that I would say is with Sean McDermott. And I mean, the numbers don't lie after this body of work. The way they've lost in the playoffs the last 4 years has been disgraceful. I got the stats in front of me. I got this from your story. 38 drives, 16 touchdowns, 8 field goals. Now, missed field goal, only 1 turnover in these elimination losses, 134 points allowed, 3.52 points per game. That's not an accident over the course of 4 games. This year, the excuse was injuries on defense. Last year, the excuse was they've been through too much. They're just drained. At what point do excuses stop becoming acceptable? That said, I also want to put at least more onus on some of the players as well, because to me, I look at the Chiefs-Bills game this past week or last week, and maybe the biggest difference to me was the star players for the Chiefs played like stars. Travis Kelce made big plays. Chris Jones made a couple big plays, at least in the fourth quarter when the game was on the line. And you look at Stephon Diggs, I think he's got 63 receiving yards in his last 3 playoff elimination losses, and especially Ed Oliver. I mean, this is a guy, and we talked about him last year too. I remember this conversation. It was him and Jermaine Evans we talked about a year ago. And Ed Oliver, this was his best season. He was a stud for most of the year. He was pissed about not being in the Pro Bowl, and he's right. You could argue that was a fair snub. Even All-Pro consideration he deserved. And then he goes into playoffs, and for the second straight year, utter disappearing act. I watched the game film, the All-22, and I'm not a big game film guy like some of these other people out there that do it so well. I don't. But I did see that Ed Oliver didn't do shit. 2 straight years. I mean, the players got to step up. You know, people are killing Dan Campbell, I'm sure, as we're recording this. Make the catch, Reynolds. Don't fumble the ball, Gibbs. 28 to safety. Don't let the ball go off your face mask. You do that, and Dan Campbell's the winner. You know what I'm saying? So the players got to play better, too. I mean, it still starts with Sean. He's the coach, and this defense has collapsed 4 times in the playoffs. Some of these players, star players, they need to step up more. They deserve a lot of blame too, and they're kind of escaping it, I think, to an extent.
I don't know. Are they escaping it? I feel like Stephon Diggs has got some criticism.
Stephon, maybe. or Stephon, you're right. Ed Oliver, there
Yeah.
should be a lot more heat going towards Ed Oliver. Where was Ed Oliver in the playoffs? Again,
It's the whole chicken or the egg thing. I mean, the defensive line was healthy. You had Taron Johnson back, Rasul Douglas back, Poyer and Hyde back there. I mean, they did have injuries at inside linebacker, and AJ Klein was off of the couch. I get all of that. A lot of teams are dealing with injuries. You had the Chiefs.
Sure.
You had the Chiefs at home.
They lost their safety on the second play of the game on offense.
You've been wanting the Chiefs at home, and you've got Allen. You've got Diggs. I'm with you. I don't think I'm admittedly very pro player in general when it comes to football.
Sure.
These are the dudes that are sacrificing their brains and bodies for a game, right? Who knows what they'll look like in their 50s, let alone 60s and 70s.
Absolutely.
So I think I skew pro player for sure. I'll admit that up front. That being said, I think that you just rattled off those statistics on defense. It's been year to year to year, 5 years in a row now of defensive meltdowns. These playoff performances, they don't resemble anything that you see in the regular season. So it's great to have the regular season success. It's great to win the AFC East. Where is the defense in the playoffs? I know Steve Spagnuolo's defense, they stepped up against the league MVP, Lamar Jackson. They stepped up in some key moments, even against the Bills. If your coach is a defensive coach, you would expect more than what we've seen with everything on the line. And hell yeah, I'm going to be more critical. I think everybody should be more critical of a playoff game than a week 11 game against the Jets or whoever.
Right.
It just matters that much more. Aaron Rodgers said himself at one point, the postseason is where you make your legacy. That's what everybody will remember, how you perform in the playoffs. What's everybody talking about today with Lamar Jackson? Are they saying how great Lamar Jackson was in the regular season? Or are they saying that he looked terrible against the Chiefs and threw into triple coverage to Isaiah Likely? It's the latter. Right or wrong,
you're right.
It's all about the playoffs.
Yeah.
For everybody, not just the Bills. And the playoffs haven't been very good on the defensive side of the ball. Let me pose it to you this way, Pat. All right, flip the stats. Those just egregious stats that were in my column after the Chiefs game. 38 drives. They allowed 16 touchdowns, 8 field goals, only 6 punts. There's 6 kneel downs, only 1 turnover forced, 134 points allowed. Now flip it. What if Josh Allen performed that terribly in 5 straight playoff games? What if he's just throwing picks all over the place, fumbling the ball, just incompetent, incoherent as a it would be deafening. It would be awful.
I couldn't agree more.
I can't imagine what the reaction would be like. So, it's to me, it's okay to criticize Sean McDermott in these spots. That 13 seconds team should have been in the Super Bowl, and they would have won that Super Bowl.
Yeah. You know what my honest reaction was to your story about McDermott too? Afterwards, loved the story again, and I agree with primarily all of it. But I was like, he ain't getting fired. Like, he ain't getting fired. He's just.
I agree.
I'm not saying he doesn't deserve to get fired. In fact, I think at this point, if you're Terry Pegula right now, and you're being honest with yourself, you look at your team, your organization, and you say, can we get farther with this guy as the head coach? And I'm feeling at this point, no. I feel like that answer is no. And that's just me being completely honest. It's not me being a Sean McDermott lover or hater. I'm just being objective. He just seems to have his worst moments in the playoffs. The defense, the numbers after 4 losses, elimination losses, they don't lie. Okay. So does he deserve to get fired if you think that this is as far as he's going to get you? Yes. But I also just I don't know Terry Pegula, but just my sense of him is he just wants his team to be competitive. If this team could be in the mix every year, I think Sean McDermott might be the head coach for the next 6 years. Even if you and I are getting together annually this time of year and talking about the latest divisional round loss where the DVOA and all the metrics look good all season long, and then they fall apart in the divisional round. This is maybe it's just me thinking I'm wrong, but I just don't have much faith that even if Sean isn't the guy to get him over the hump, as long as he keeps his team 9-10 wins, divisional rounds, winning a game in the playoffs, whatever, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. Maybe I'm wrong.
I agree. I've heard the same thing that Tim Graham has. He's reported on it as well, that ownership, Terry Pegula, they're sticking with Sean McDermott. I mean, they have. The season's over now.
Mm-hmm.
They believe in him. There's a lot of ways to look at it, right? Because I think that all owners of all professional sports teams, they're looking at numbers that nobody else is privy to. Business is good for the Buffalo Bills.
Mm-hmm.
They win the division. They get to the playoffs. They've got a new stadium around the corner. Now there's a whole story there on Kathy Hochul using the funds from the Seneca Nation, held ransom potentially. There's a lot going on there where that money's coming from. If you're going to do that, maybe that money could be used for something other than a stadium. There's a hearty debate to be had there that really hasn't been had in a public forum. But however you slice it, taxpayers are going to be, paying some money for a stadium.
Sure.
We'll need to fill that stadium. There was one longtime Bill I talked to for this series that put it this way. Like, if you're Terry Pagula under these parameters and the team's competitive, you're always going to be competitive with Josh Allen as your quarterback and Sean McDermott as your coach. At no point did I say the wheels are going to fall off this team. They're terrible. Like, he is a good defensive coach. He brings order and discipline. They will function well. If you're always going to win 10 games, 11 games, and fans are going to show up to that stadium and pay a good amount for the product, why are you really compelled to just throw a wrench into all of that? I get it to a point. That comes back to what we were getting on earlier. Like, don't fear the other side. Don't be terrified of the other side. It could be better. You could get to a Super Bowl. You could win that Super Bowl. Business could boom in ways you don't even comprehend if you own a pro sports team. Green Bay was probably processing the same stuff. I don't think Mark Murphy, Brian Gutekunst, Matt LaFleur wanted to be the regime that traded an MVP quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. They didn't want to do that, even as Aaron Rodgers is holding them hostage all offseason. He demanded a trade for whatever it was, 3-4 months. He leaked reports that Brian Gutekunst, the GM, needed to be fired for him to return. That he put that out there, and then it wasn't denied. And then he comes back on the eve of training camp. He holds a press conference that was an airing of grievances. It was Festivus, baby, for Aaron Rodgers. He just ripped the team at a press conference openly, saying you shouldn't have let this player go. You shouldn't have let that player go. Half the players, he said, but the Packers were proven right to let those players go.
Yeah.
Maybe not Micah Hyde. They let him go too soon. They kind of made their point for him. So he did all this, and Green Bay still let it play out. They still paid him a 3-year, $150 million contract that they're still on the books for, right? It's a big reason they had the youngest team to ever make the playoffs too. They couldn't pay anybody.
Yeah.
Even that, because of the fear of, oh my God, what does it look like post Aaron Rodgers? You're seeing the same fear here. I see it. Oh my God, what is it going to look like without Sean McDermott? I tend to kind of agree with what one other former Bill said in part 3. Like, you could replace the head coach with just about anybody and it wouldn't be much worse. I know that's a strong statement. I can see where he's coming from, though.
Sure.
When Josh Allen is your quarterback.
Yeah.
When he is that good. Because I really believe he is that good. If I'm wrong, if you want to disagree with that, that's fine too. I get the turnovers, all of that. But you're gonna get an interception here or there because he is a modern day Brett Favre. Give me that quarterback.
First of all, when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, I don't root for anyone to get hurt, but there's maybe 2 to 3 players in the NFL where if they get hurt, I'm not feeling sad, and he's one of them.
I wouldn't go that far, Pat. You're on an island there.
I am on an island. It's okay. I hate Aaron Rodgers as a person. Anyway, the Terry Pagula stuff, I want to be wrong. I don't like what I'm saying. I just feel like that's what it is right now. I'd like to be wrong, because if I think that Sean McDermott is taking you as far as you're going to go, then you might want to look elsewhere. Certainly it's not going to happen this year. We'll see what happens maybe a year from now if they're back in the same thing. One last thing, too, with the Bills. And you didn't write about this. Maybe I'm being a little bit of a dick, but I'm just got to be honest here. Tyler Bass misses the field goal, and the hatred was just out of control, okay? I mean, if you're making a threat on this guy's life, you're a scumbag, you're a piece of shit. I get all that. To hate to burn his jerseys and put videos up, that's so stupid.
People are doing that?
Yeah, yeah. I've seen multiple videos of that. Somebody burning a Tyler Bass jersey.
Good God.
That's just so over the line, so stupid. And good on Bills fans to raise all that money for the 10 Lives Club.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's what Bills fans do. So by and large, this is respectful towards Buffalo Bills. They do so many good things. And don't be a piece of shit and threaten a guy like that. But I will say this. I see so many tweets. Oh, we got your back. We pick you up when you're down, this and that. I'm like, make the fucking kick, dude. Make the kick. You missed 3 field goals in the playoffs. Make the kick, all right? Talking about these expectations, I expect the kicker to make the kick. And he missed 3 in the playoffs. Again, don't threaten the dude. Don't burn his jersey. Don't be a piece of shit. Let's stop with this whole, Buffalo and get your back. Yeah, make the goddamn kick, man.
I get the general sentiment there because that's his job, right? To kick, to make kicks.
Yeah, and I know you're pro player.
But Pat, if he makes that kick,
they lose anyway, probably.
Patrick Mahomes is going down the field.
I know. I know. Make the kick anyway, though. Give me another minute.
Extend the game.
Torture me for another minute and 40 something seconds or whatever.
What was your take on the Khalil Shakir going for the end zone? Chris Jones walks Deion Dawkins back, and it's just enough to throw it off.
First of all, again, difference between Chris Jones and Ed Oliver.
There it is.
And I don't hate Ed Oliver had a great year, but just 2 straight years, man.
Again, is it about the regular season or is it about the playoffs?
Right.
It's about the playoffs.
You're right. In 2 straight years, Ed Oliver, by and large, not even close, has had his worst game of the season. 2 straight years in a divisional round loss. I don't know. It's a very tough question to answer because you are right. The Chiefs had all the time in the world if he scores. That said, I think if you get a chance for a touchdown to go up 4 and make them need to score a touchdown instead of just a field goal, I don't know how you don't take that. I don't know how you don't throw that ball. And if it would have been a little bit higher, if it wasn't Chris Jones, probably is a touchdown.
You work from the end zone to your check down. If you're, and that kind of comes back to the part of the point in the column I wrote after the game where you need some explosives.
Oh yeah.
That would be a concern of mine if I was a Bills fan. Sure. I get it. It's good to have a rushing attack. You need that in your back pocket, but it became the basis for the offense.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you're running at will, getting 5-yard chunks, 6-yard chunks, it's a big play league. And you've got Josh Allen. Why would you keep that in the garage? You want to take shots. So yeah, hell yeah, he should go to the end zone to Khalil Shakir in that.
Yeah,
he was open.
You never, anything can happen on the last drive. Maybe that's the one bad pass Pat Mahomes throws the whole game. Maybe it gets tipped. Greg Rizzo or AJ Epinesa, who pretty much did nothing that game. Maybe they finally get a hand on a ball and it goes straight up in the air.
Yeah.
And Dorian Williams, of all people, comes down with the interception. You never know what could happen.
True, you never know.
You don't not take the points. Sure, you want to milk that clock and make Kansas City use their timeouts. Of course you do. But if the touchdown's there, I just don't see how you not take it. And I agree with you about I hate running the football. It's boring.
It just struck me as kind of
worked. It worked against the Chiefs, man. They put up 24, Ty. They should have put up 31. Not for Chris Jones. They put up 31. They held the ball 2/3 of the game, keep Mahomes off the field. Didn't get a turnover on defense, and they still had all those yards and time off the clock and points. I don't know. It's tough. It's not as tough as the Bengals game, though. I don't know why. I had higher expectations this year, so I'm more disappointed. Maybe this team, I'm just getting used to this being where Sean McDermott gets his team to, and I'm almost becoming a little bit numb because I did not enjoy this season. I talked about this. This was the least enjoyable Josh Allen season I've ever had because I just wanted it so bad this year. I felt this was their last best opportunity. Not their last opportunity, but their last best opportunity because Joe Burrow goes down. And I just think the Bengals own the Bills. And other quarterbacks or key players got injured. And you're at home against the Chiefs having the worst offensive season they've had during this Pat Mahomes era by far. And I thought Baltimore, as good as they were very beatable at home. The Bills match up well against the Ravens. Justin Herbert down, the Chargers down, just so many factors that played into the Bills getting to the Super Bowl this year. As it played out, which is funny because when your article dropped, I'm like, this team's 6-6 and they fucking suck. That's how I felt at the time. And then they just turned it on.
They did.
It was the Tyler Dunne season. The Bills.
I'm not that important. But can I say this, though? That what was encouraging, I think, out of Sean McDermott, even through the game, granted, little overcompensation with the fake punt to Damar Hamlin.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really kill that decision, though, because
me neither.
I think that Sean made a conscious effort to be more aggressive. He did start using some timeouts at the end of halves to preserve time for Josh Allen. He did go for it on 4th and 1, 4th and 2 more than he did before. He did manage games more aggressively. So I think, to look at this glass half full, I'm Mr. Positivity over here when it comes to Sean McDermott. Maybe that is something you can carry into 2024. If he's going to coach more aggressively, I love Dan Campbell and the way he's coached.
Me too.
The thing is, though, that's what Dan Campbell did from day one. I shouldn't say day one. I'm sorry. From week 3 of 2022, they attempted a 54-yard field goal against the Vikings instead of going for it on 4th and 3 to end the game. They missed the kick. It opened the door for Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. They lose the game. Dan Campbell's at the press conference, emotional, upset, saying he will never make that mistake for the rest of his time as the coach. He's going to think about it for the rest of his life. That point forward, they went for it on 4th down.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to inject belief into his players. It has so many psychological benefits when your guys know that you believe in them. You can feel it. You can see it. And the Lions take it to the extreme. And that's really how they were able to just change everything in Detroit. This is a team that won 1 playoff game since 1957 before this season. Dan Campbell changed that because of that approach. So that's who they are. Now, I don't think the Bills can just become that in the middle of a season, right? But give Sean McDermott credit for trying something new and starting to kind of go that direction toward the end of the season.
He went for
to a little bit of the extreme with Damar Hamlin, but his messaging was on point, wasn't it? The halftime interview of that Chiefs playoffs game, what did he tell the reporter, Tracy Wolfson, whoever it was? Go for it. That was the message. We're going for it. At his season-ending press conference, that was a theme. Believing in the players, being aggressive. If that's something that does carry over, I don't care what they do personnel-wise, you'll always have a chance to win these playoff games.
Let me give you a sizzly hot take here. I think your article has something to do with that. I truly do. Listen, we all know he read it. We all know he addressed it. We all know a lot of things about that article. We all saw the Kansas City game when they won in the locker room, how emotional he was about winning that game. And Brandon Beane was firing his ass up with Terry Bagula sitting in the background. This one's for you. It became like, and I say this joking for the most part when I say the Ty Dunne comeback. But when that article drops, Sean McDermott changed. Don't tell me he didn't, because he did. Because he did start going for it a lot more. You talk about the fake punt. The Bills went for it on 4th and a half yard on the first drive of the game on their own 32-yard line or something like that against the Chiefs in the playoffs too. There was a switch that came off with Sean McDermott. And I think to some extent, the players, of course, it's their coach. They're going to rally around him. Whether they agree with some stuff or not, that's the coach. They're going to rally around him. I truly, honestly, and I'm not joking, I'm being dead serious, dead ass. I think that
as the kids say, dead ass,
man. I think your series that dropped had a direct impact on Sean McDermott and how he coached the rest of the season and maybe the football team.
Well, I don't know. Only he can answer that. I don't think we're that important in the media. We're just trying
to agree
with
that. I think if it's the right article,
share the stories. If it
don't
is,
give me the politically correct answer. Come on, man. Your article had an impact on what the Bills did for the rest of the season.
If he is more aggressive, I think that's a great thing for the Bills. And part of me gets it. He's not unlike any defensive head coach. These defensive coaches, they come up a certain way and they believe in leaning into that defense, trusting their D in tight, difficult spots late in games, right? It's not necessarily thinking I've got a freak show at quarterback. Let's be aggressive because that's what our team should orbit around. It's no, the team should orbit around our defense. And I think that's what kind of ticked off coaches, players these last few seasons, that light bulb just didn't seem to go off in his mind that you've got Josh Allen, you've got something special. You've got to change. You got to call an audible, Sean. Like this team was going to orbit around the quarterback, not your defense. If that changed through this all, then the Bills are going to be better for it.
Josh started running the football a lot more. Again, not coincidence. By the way, do you think that at the time Ken Dorsey was a scapegoat? Do you think he deserved to get fired when he did? I mean, it seems like it worked out. Joe Brady stepped in. He did a good job. They got the running game going a lot more. Khalil Shakir really stepped up in the second half of the season. But at the time, because he got fired after the Denver game, where again, the game was over and they should have won. And if there's no penalty and the Bills hold on to win that game, I don't think Ken Dorsey's getting fired after a Thursday night win. Do you feel like he was a scapegoat for Sean at the time?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's been a theme. We've got the reporting in the series on Leslie Frazier.
Yeah.
I know Leslie Frazier has done interviews, and the Bills had that public statement ready to go at the combine last year. I also know there's an NFL beyond podiums and beyond interviews, and hopefully the series answers some questions. But yet Leslie Frazier is not the defensive coordinator for a reason. Just as the thing is, though, a lot of these coaches also left on their own accord, often for lateral jobs. However it went down, I do think that Ken Dorsey was a convenient scapegoat at that time. But Sean McDermott also wanted the offense run a certain way, and Ken Dorsey wasn't running it that way. He wanted them to run the ball more.
Yeah.
Back to what he wanted before. Go back to the wind game with Brian Dable. He had at the press conference saying he wanted them to win the line of scrimmage, run the ball more. You heard a lot of the same buzzwords. Now, that's not a criticism. Maybe he was right. And they ran the ball more. They had some success. They won some games. To me, I think that you're going to have to lean in to Josh Allen and the pass and your strengths to string together those 3-4 playoff wins that you're going to need that time of year. But Joe Brady obviously did a great job. It looked like those coaches up there were having fun. They're getting creative at times, but the run was central to the offense in a way it wasn't with Ken Dorsey.
Are you looking forward to digging in to the Bill? I mean, of course, you cover the whole NFL, but this is going to be an interesting offseason, I think, for the Buffalo Bills, because I think there's going to be a lot of roster turnover because of the salary cap and how many free agents they got. I'm sure you're going to be doing some reporting on this. Looking forward to
GoLongTD.com, right? That's where we want people to subscribe.
And check out the podcast too, man.
Yes, the podcast too.
I'm a podcast guy. Don't come on here and not promote your own podcast. All right, guys, that's going to do it. Thank you very much, man. My man, Tyler Dunne, at Ty Dunne on Twitter. Depending on what you tweet to him, he may or may not mute you immediately after. But
I'm not a muter or a blocker. I'm a lover.
All right, guys, I'll be back with a brand new show tomorrow. I'll talk to you then.